Today, we'll dive into a case that once shocked the Chinese-American community, the mysterious disappearance of a young woman named Meng Qi. She was a talented and beautiful individual, but one day she vanished without a trace. So, what happened to Meng Qi? Meng Qi was born in 1991 in Xi'an, China, as an only child. Meng Qi was known for her intelligence, sharp wit, and charming personality. From a young age, recognizing their daughter's potential, her parents made every effort to provide her with the best and most diverse education possible. Meng Qi began studying calligraphy and painting at the age of 5, learned table tennis and swimming by the age of 7, and by 10 she could play both the guitar and the piano. When she entered middle school, she started exploring the art of photography. From elementary school through college, Meng Qi persistently studied English, preparing for her future studies abroad. To support her in improving her language skills, her parents even hired a private English tutor for her. After graduating from high school, Meng Qi was accepted into the East China University of Science and Technology in Shanghai, where she majored in mechanical engineering. During her university years, her outstanding academic performance earned her the opportunity to become an exchange student at the University of Missouri, a prestigious Ivy League school located in Columbia, Missouri. In December 2014, at the age of 23, Meng Qi received her master's degree in mechanical and aerospace engineering from the University of Missouri. After graduation, she decided to work for a dental products manufacturing company in Colombia instead of following her initial plan to return to China. By 2016, while working, Meng Qi met a man named Joseph Elledge, who was 21 years old at the time and also a student at the university she had attended. Joseph hadn't graduated yet and was an intern at the company where Meng Qi was his direct supervisor. After meeting, their relationship quickly developed, and they soon started discussing marriage. To gain the approval of Meng Qi's family and demonstrate his commitment, Joseph didn't hesitate to travel to China to meet her parents. On September 22, 2017, Meng Qi and Joseph walked down the aisle in front of their family and friends. After getting married, Meng Qi and Joseph chose a 750-square-foot apartment in the eastern part of Colombia as their new home. Their married life seemed very happy, and Meng Qi often shared daily moments on social media. Not long after, Meng Qi became pregnant and decided to take a break from work to prepare for motherhood, with plans to return to work once their child started preschool. On October 3, 2018, their first daughter was born. Meng Qi's parents flew from China to the US and stayed for a while to visit their daughter and new granddaughter. However, their joy was short-lived as differences in parenting and child care began to surface between the young couple. The cultural differences between China and the US became more apparent than ever. In China, women are expected to follow strict postpartum practices and take many precautions during this period, while in the US such concepts are almost non-existent. When Meng Qi's parents arrived, Joseph felt sidelined as everyone except him spoke Chinese. He also strongly disagreed with the traditional childcare methods practiced by Meng Qi and her mother. By the summer of 2019, cracks had started to appear in their marriage. Meng Qi, who was at home taking care of their child full-time, couldn't return to her previous job and could only take on some online translation work to help with the family's daily expenses. Meanwhile, Joseph had just received an internship opportunity at a large company in Carthage, Missouri, which was quite far from their home. As a result, he needed to rent a place near the company to make commuting easier. This not only increased the family's expenses but also created more distance in their relationship. Every time Joseph returned home, they would end up arguing, causing their relationship to grow colder. On the morning of October 10, 2019, Meng Qi's parents, who had already returned to China, were unable to contact their daughter. Normally, Meng Qi would communicate with her mother almost daily through a social media calling app. But now, not only could they not reach their daughter, but they also couldn't get in touch with her husband or mother-in-law. Worried, Meng Qi's mother asked a friend to visit her daughter's apartment in Colombia to check on her. After a light drizzle had just stopped, this friend arrived at the door of Gong Qi's apartment while video calling her mother. The friend knocked on the door, and Joseph answered. It was then that everyone learned the shocking truth: Gong Qi had been missing for 2 days. With a firm tone, Gong Qi's mother demanded that Joseph call the police immediately. However, he replied that Gong Qi had likely just gone out to work and would return soon since their child was still breastfeeding, so she wouldn't be gone for long. It wasn't until 3:30 p.m. that Joseph finally reported to the police that his Chinese wife had been missing for 2 days. According to reports, shortly after contacting the police, Joseph's mother called Gong Qi's parents, explaining that her phone had been broken for the past few days, which is why she hadn't received their calls. In their preliminary investigation, the police discovered that Joseph and Gong Qi's marriage appeared to be seriously strained. They frequently argued, and notably, in August 2019, Gong Qi had contacted a friend to inquire about divorce lawyers, indicating that she was considering ending the marriage. On the afternoon of October 8, 2019, Gong Qi had a video call with her mother around 9:15 p.m. She spoke with a friend about buying formula for her child. The last person to see Gong Qi was Joseph. Joseph stated that before 9:30 p.m. on October 8, he had given his wife a back massage in the bedroom, hoping they could be intimate, but she declined. He added that this had become common recently, so he went to the couch to play video games. He went to bed at 11:30 p.m., and at that time, Gong Qi was already asleep. At 5 a.m. on October 9, Joseph was awakened by their daughter's crying, so he got up to soothe her and then went back to sleep. By 8 a.m., the daughter was crying again, and that's when he noticed his wife was not at home. Upon checking, he saw that the car was still parked outside, and Gong Qi had only taken her wallet, leaving behind her phone, passport, and a change of clothes. Their daughter had just turned 1 year old, so he assumed his wife had simply gone out for something important and would return soon, and he didn't think much of it. Later, reflecting on the issues they'd been having recently, he decided to take their daughter for a drive to clear his mind. In the morning, Joseph drove to Jefferson City, about 30 miles south of their home. He returned around 10:30 a.m. At 6:30 p.m., he went out driving again. First, he drove 15 miles south to Ashland, then 10 miles east to Guthrie. He returned to Ashland and then drove to the Katy Trail in the woods west of Columbia. Around 9:30 p.m., he reached Rooseport, finally realizing it was late. Joseph decided to head back home. Early the next morning, Gong Qi's mother's friend came to look for her. At first, he didn't notice anything unusual, but by the afternoon, he sensed that something was wrong and called the police. After the police began their investigation, they quickly employed professional investigative measures. Gong Qi's information was entered into the National Missing Persons Database, and the police sought court permission to access her personal information, including her credit card records. However, the investigation faced challenges since there were no surveillance cameras in Gong Qi's apartment, making it impossible to determine when she left the house. Recognizing the need for community support, the police urged the public to actively share the missing person notice and provide any leads related to Gong Qi. After the news of her disappearance spread, local volunteers, the Chinese community, and her friends joined the search efforts, hoping to find her soon. Meanwhile, her parents were making arrangements to travel to the U.S. as quickly as possible. As the investigation deepened, the case became increasingly mysterious and complex. The police quickly ruled out the possibility that Gong Qi had left on her own. The reasoning was clear: her daughter was still breastfeeding, and Gong Qi deeply loved her child, so she wouldn't have disappeared without a reason. Contrary to the initial assumptions, Joseph gradually became the prime suspect in the case. His unusual behavior after his wife's disappearance, along with inconsistencies in his statements, led the police to focus more closely on his involvement in the situation. Despite his wife being missing for 2 days and their 1-year-old daughter needing care, Joseph remained remarkably calm. He didn't seem worried and didn't ask anyone about his wife's whereabouts. Moreover, on the evening he reported her missing, he even arranged to meet friends to play video games. According to Gong Qi's close friend, 3 days after his wife went missing, Joseph used her social media account to contact her and asked if Gong Qi had reached out to her. He not only mentioned that he and Gong Qi had not been getting along lately and that their relationship had become distant, but he also hinted that his wife might be having an affair. However, when the friend asked Joseph if he needed any help or had any news about Gong Qi, he didn't respond further. In reality, Joseph was very controlling. He rarely allowed Gong Qi much time outside of the home. If she wanted to travel, even for just a few days, he would express his displeasure. By October 15, 2019, a week after Gong Qi's disappearance, her parents arrived in the U.S. in a state of extreme anxiety. That evening, Joseph gave an interview to a local news outlet. During the 9-minute interview about his wife's disappearance, he bizarrely laughed several times and even broke into laughter when the reporter asked Joseph what made him fall in love with Gong Qi. He raised his eyebrows and, while laughing, described her in a detached manner, almost as if listing qualifications for a job. He spoke about his wife without emotion, saying things like she was professional, hard-working, diligent, and enjoyed working to earn money, which he found helpful. When asked why he delayed reporting his wife missing when she had only taken a wallet and had been gone for several days, Joseph replied, "I don't know where she went. I only know she had plans to meet someone the next morning." The fact that she didn't take her phone and other belongings was indeed very strange. During the interview, Joseph once again revealed that he and his wife were going through a very difficult time and subtly suggested that his wife might be having an affair. He then added, "My wife loves our child very much, and I would call her an amazing mother, the best mother ever. I hope Gong Qi returns safely, and we can repair our marriage as soon as possible." What's strange is that Joseph knew his wife didn't take her phone, keys, or anything else, and he himself said that she would be back soon. But instead of leaving any message for her, he locked the house and drove their 1-year-old child to various suburban towns twice, then ventured onto a secluded and dense forest trail. He wandered for 8 hours. This unusual behavior only heightened the police's suspicions about Joseph. On October 17, 2019, based on the evidence they had gathered, the police interrogated Joseph and obtained a search warrant for the apartment as well as for investigating his computer and mobile phone data. Through the investigation of Joseph's cell phone signals on October 9, the police discovered that he had concealed parts of his itinerary from that day. In addition to the places he mentioned, he had gone to other locations. After reaching Rousport, he didn't go home right away but continued driving west to Boonville. From there, he drove another 9 miles west to Lamine. Before reaching Lamine, he crossed the Lamine River and stopped nearby for about 45 minutes. The police found a total of 12 audio recordings of arguments between Joseph and Gong Qi on his phone. In one recording, Joseph angrily told Gong Qi, "I'm going to bury you in the ground. You're lucky to even be in the US. You'd better go back to China. I never want to talk to you again." His mother was present when Joseph made these comments. In another recording, Joseph repeatedly berated his wife, demanding that she obey him, and said, "This isn't abuse. I know you want me to hit you." Additionally, the police found 2 notebooks at Joseph's home. One was his journal, which contained 51 pages detailing why he hated his wife. The other notebook included reminders and notes on what to keep in mind and answering police interrogations. During the investigation, the police also discovered that Joseph had previously abused his daughter, who was not even 1 year old. Gong Qi's mother and friends had received photos and videos showing the child with injuries on her body before she disappeared. Gong Qi had told her family that she wanted to report the injuries to the police, but Joseph repeatedly promised her that he would never hurt their daughter again. So, she gave him another chance and decided not to contact the authorities. With the evidence from the photos and videos, the police were ready to arrest Joseph on charges of child abuse. On October 25, 2019, when the police arrived at Joseph's home to arrest him, they found him and his mother packing their bags. They claimed they were planning to take their young daughter on a trip, but to the police, this looked like an attempt to flee before being arrested. After his arrest, Joseph was held in the local jail with bail set at $500,000 for the child abuse charge. Such a high bail amount is rare, likely indicating that the police wanted to prevent Joseph from being released on bail. A month after Meng Qi's disappearance, the police announced that there was no evidence suggesting she was still alive. Based on the clues gathered, they officially classified the disappearance as a homicide, with Joseph being the prime suspect. For several days, the police conducted extensive searches along the routes Joseph had traveled, suspecting that the Lamine River might be where he disposed of Meng Qi's body. They deployed professional divers, sonar equipment, and K-9 units to aid in the search and help the search team access areas where they hoped to find the body. The police even constructed a temporary flood barrier. However, they were ultimately unable to find any clues in the area. It was later realized that this might have been a false lead created by Joseph. On February 19, 2020, despite the lack of direct evidence, Joseph was charged with first-degree murder. He was also charged with child abuse, endangering the welfare of a child, and third-degree domestic assault. However, Joseph steadfastly denied the murder charge, insisting that Meng Qi had left the house on her own. On March 15, 2020, nearly 18 months after Gong's disappearance, a hiker walking in Rockbridge State Park discovered human remains and alerted the police. When the police searched the area, they found Gong's wallet not far from the remains. Through dental records, the police confirmed that the remains were indeed those of Meng Qi. After Gong's body was found, Joseph suddenly changed his story. He claimed that shortly before their daughter's first birthday, he accidentally saw messages on his wife's phone and discovered she had been talking to another man. The content of the messages was inappropriate, but Joseph said he didn't want to start a fight. He only wanted to repair their relationship. On the evening of October 8, he tried to give Meng Qi a back massage, hoping they could be intimate afterward, but she refused, saying she had things to do the next morning. At this point, Joseph became very frustrated and mentioned that he had seen the messages. They then had a big argument. Not wanting to continue arguing, Joseph said he went to the kitchen to put on his shoes, intending to take their daughter to the nearby park for a walk. But when Meng Qi saw him about to pick up their daughter, she ran to the kitchen door and pushed him. He pushed back, causing her to hit a cabinet. He then attempted to pick up their daughter again, but she pulled him back, and in the struggle, he accidentally pushed her to the ground. At that moment, Joseph said he heard a loud noise, as if Meng Qi had hit her head on something. Panicking, he quickly lifted her onto the sofa. Meng Qi warned him not to take their daughter outside. In the end, he decided to walk around the house by himself for about 45 minutes. When he returned, he noticed that his wife was no longer on the sofa. However, he didn't want to get involved, so he just laid down on the sofa and played on his phone. When Joseph went to bed at 11:30 p.m., he saw that his wife was already asleep in bed, so he lay down as well. At 5 a.m., he was awakened by his daughter's crying and got up to soothe her. When he returned to the bedroom, he noticed that his wife was still lying motionless, which struck him as very odd. When he reached out to touch her, he realized her body was cold and she was no longer breathing. Joseph was terrified at that moment and worried that if he didn't explain the situation clearly, the police might mistakenly think he was the murderer. After a period of intense internal conflict, he ultimately decided to put his wife's body in the trunk of his car and find a secluded place to bury her the next day. On October 9, Joseph drove around with his daughter for a long time but couldn't find a suitable place to bury his wife's body. Early the next morning, his mother-in-law's friend came looking for Meng Qi, and he had no choice but to lie, saying that his wife had left home and he didn't know where she had gone. He then hurriedly drove his daughter to Rockbridge State Park, about 5 miles from their home. At that point, Joseph left his daughter in the car while he got out to find a remote area with no cell phone signal. It took him about 40 minutes to bury Gongqi's body. The police later confirmed through the thorns on his shoes that he had been to the location where his wife's body was found. Ironically, the spot where Joseph buried Gong's body was only about half a mile from where he had proposed to her. On October 1, 2021, Joseph's murder trial was brought to court. Once again, his lawyer argued that Gongqi had pushed Joseph first, and in response, Joseph pushed her back, causing her to fall and hit her head. The lawyer claimed that Gongqi got up afterward and went to bed, only to be found dead the next morning due to a brain hemorrhage. The lawyer described Gong's death as a tragic accident. He also argued that Joseph's failure to seek help immediately after discovering his wife was dead and his subsequent series of poor decisions were evidence that he had no premeditated plan and did not intentionally kill his wife. Of course, the prosecutor did not agree with this perspective. The prosecutor argued that the audio recordings revealed that Joseph and Gongqi frequently argued. He criticized and insulted her appearance and complained that Gongqi's parents coming to the U.S. had caused him significant trouble. He also expressed a desire to divorce her as soon as possible but was concerned that the divorce would be costly. The police described Joseph as someone who was blindly jealous, controlling, and manipulative. They suggested that he killed Gongqi because he didn't want to pay high divorce fees and didn't want his wife to take their daughter back to China. It's likely that Joseph strangled his wife while giving her a massage, which would explain the lack of blood at the scene. The prosecutor believed that Joseph had planned to kill his wife for a long time. Therefore, the prosecutor urged the jury to convict him of first-degree murder and deny any possibility of bail. On November 11, 2021, after several days of deliberation, the jury unanimously found Joseph guilty of second-degree murder in the death of Gongqi and recommended a sentence of 28 years in prison. By December 7, the defense had presented several new arguments. First, Joseph's defense attorney argued that the evidence provided by the police was unfair to Joseph. Specifically, while the audio recordings did capture Joseph speaking to Gongqi in a very harsh manner, this alone did not prove that Joseph had a motive to kill his wife. The defense claimed that relying on these recordings as the key piece of evidence was unfair to the defendant. Additionally, the defense pointed out that in October 2019, the Colombia police had interrogated Joseph for 3 hours and used statements from that interrogation as evidence against him. The defense argued that this was clearly unreasonable because at the time, Joseph was only being held temporarily and the police had not informed him of his right to remain silent. Therefore, the content of that interrogation should not be used as evidence to convict him. In the end, the police only examined the soil on Joseph's shoes to establish that he had killed his wife. This approach was somewhat tenuous and could be considered at most circumstantial evidence. During the hearing on January 7, 2022, the judge stated that Joseph's attitude throughout the entire case was terrible and he showed no remorse or sorrow for his wife. Therefore, he didn't deserve any sympathy. The court rejected the defense arguments presented by Joseph's lawyer. Ultimately, Joseph was still sentenced to 28 years in prison for the crime he committed. And that's the story for today. What do you think about the sentence handed down by the court? Do you believe it was fair? Let's discuss it in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.